The term Happy New Year never had more meaning than last night, Week 17 in the National Football League. It was Sunday Night Football, the Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. To quote Chandler from Friends, could the stakes be any more higher? It's rhetorical. Absolutely not. Both teams controlling their own destiny. The rules are simple. You win the last two games in this season, you are in the playoffs. You lose just one. Basically, mathematically, you are out, eliminated. You would need many 2024 miracles to sniff that last playoff position. So it's win and you are in the next 2 weeks. Both teams struggling. Both teams not having the years they've wanted up to this point. Both teams finding themselves in a position where they better figure it out quick. Because Sunday Night Football went live. One team can win, one team must lose. How did it all go down? Who is currently in the 7th position, the final spot in the playoffs? Let's talk about it. Packers, Vikings, Week 17. Let's get amplified. In the entertainment industry, we call that a cold open teaser. But in case you were truly living under a rock last night, don't know who won the game, and don't know who currently sits in the 7th and final playoff spot for the NFC, it is the Packers from Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers defeated the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football, Week 17 of the National Football League, 33-10. Come to think of it, didn't we score 33 points last week too? That was much different. 33-30 against the Panthers, I believe. This was a little bit more lopsided, thankfully, 33-10. And that touchdown that Minnesota scored, well, that's only because our special teams botched. Literally on a kickoff, it was going to be our possession. We're inside the 10-yard line. And we just botched and fumbled and bumbled, and Minnesota picked up the ball, already in the red zone, ready to score, and a couple plays later, that's exactly what they did. You take away that botch, I'm not so sure that team is going to score a touchdown last night. And I feel bad for the Vikings a little bit. I know, a Packer fan telling you this. But I couldn't imagine having 5 quarterbacks in one season. And I believe that's exactly what they did last night. They played a 5th quarterback in their season. That's wild. You never want to see that happen to any team, because you think if that's your team, 5 quarterbacks, there's no way you can become established. And to think that they were even talking about the playoffs, man, the Vikings, that's wild to think. If they fine-tuned a couple 2-tree areas, that could be a team right there, just like the Lions turned it around. But anyway, we don't got to think about that, because they're pretty much done. It would take a New Year's miracle, many of them, for the Vikings to enter the playoffs. One of them would have to be the Packers losing to the Bears next week. And you might not want to scoff at that, because we said we were going to easily defeat the Panthers last week, one of the worst teams in the league, going into that game 2-12. And they almost beat us. If they got that snap off and spiked the ball, there's no way we were winning in overtime should they have kicked that field goal and entered overtime. So the point is, just because it's the Bears and they're not having a great season, well, guess what? Put the records aside. We're not either. We had a really good game last night. But I really want to question how excited we should be going into next week. How much of last night was just the lack of execution and in every area and every dimension from the Vikings. Because we put up our backup QB last night and he hit a 40-yard bomb. They weren't even covering. It didn't matter if it was Jordan Love or Steve Urkel. Put anybody out there and they were going to put up some numbers. So I'm not taking anything away from our Green Bay Packers. I'm just saying, let's take it with a grain of salt. There was a time period just a couple of months ago where we won a couple 2-3 games in a row after going on a slide. And everybody was anointing us one of the best teams in the league all of a sudden. And then the Packers from the first part of the year showed up again. And we started losing every which way imaginable, some games to just horrible teams. And we were just on one of those slides. Our defense completely just gave up on Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator. He lost the room. So there was cries of him just not even being on this team. A lot of us, most of us, if you follow anything to do with the NFL, you ain't even got to be a Packer fan. We were all saying the same thing. A Joe Barry defense cannot go into Minnesota. Minnesota would have to have one of their worst games ever for us to have a chance. Well, that happened, thankfully. And Joe Barry's defense stood up for him. That's the first time we've seen that in a couple of months, actually. I'm not even just talking about the last 3 weeks where we are on one of the worst losing streaks I've ever seen, judging by how we've been playing. But Joe Barry, it's not just we're the youngest team in the NFL, or just give it some time, or it's just a slide. It happens in sports, especially football. No, those we can deal with, right? Losses, back-to-back losses. Sometimes you go on losing streaks. But the way the defense was playing, this last whole month especially, that tells you Barry lost the team, right? It was the lack of fundamentals. It wasn't just this area needs to be cleaned up. This area has to be improved. That's just bad luck. That's just a botch. No, it was all of the fundamentals have fallen to the wayside, and that's usually when you know the coach lost the room. LaFleur has been doing all he can offensively, though. He really needs to work in that area. So Joe Barry needs to step up big time while LaFleur is doing such. Unfortunately, Barry regressed. He just went backwards. So Joe Barry was going to have the game of a lifetime. His defense was going to have to step up bigger than they ever did in the calendar year. And the Vikings were just going to have a bad game. You put those three things together, and that's the only way we're winning this game. I wasn't concerned with the offense. There's a lot of areas that need to be cleaned up. Jordan Love continues to overthrow people by 100 yards. Yes, that's a football field. I don't know what he's thinking sometimes. And he's good. We all know he's got the talent. He's putting up decent numbers, good numbers. In some areas, beating Aaron Rodgers in Rodgers' first full year as starting quarterback for the Packers. So the ratings, the numbers, I'm not concerned with that. It's some of these throws in clutch situations. Man, I hope it cleans up. And just because it's his first full year as a starting quarterback in the league doesn't mean it's his first year in the league. These are some throws that need to be adjusted in year one. That's the concern we have for Jordan Love. When the game is on the line, it comes down, the stakes could not be higher. Is he going to deliver in that clutch moment? That's the Jordan Love. Once you put that with the talent that he has, I'm not going to put him in a category of Favre and Rodgers. No. He needs to be in his own category, the Love category, so that in the future we can say Favre, Rodgers, Love. Verdict is still out. We know he's got the skill. We know he's got the talent. Can he put together the clutch aspect? Because when you're clutch, that's the only thing that truly catapults you to greatness. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that are good. Statistically, ratings-wise, right? Really good, dependable. You'll give them a call, if your quarterback goes down, like a Joe Flacco. But are you amazing in the clutch? That's what will propel you to greatness. I can speak. More coffee, BC. So, it's a joyous time. A new year and a massive victory. And I know I'm starting this off talking about all these what ifs and negatives and areas that need to be cleaned up. But I'm saying this because we are in a position to do some damage. We're in a position where if we win one more game, the Chicago Bears, that intense rivalry from day one, and it's next week, the final game of the season. We win that, we're in the playoffs. Playoffs? This is a team that just a few weeks, the last week, we were just talking about getting first downs. We were talking about stopping 10-yard runs and stopping 40-yard bombs consistently. We're a team that just last week we're talking about just playing semi-decent defense. And we're talking playoffs. If we beat the Bears next week, we have a chance. No, nobody's saying we're winning the Super Bowl or we have a team capable enough to do such with some of the elite teams that are in this league right now. But we could do some damage. We can disrupt the status quo that the insiders thought was going to be that playoff picture. And isn't that a little bit of fun? And if this team shows up in a little bit of bad luck against our opponent, who knows? It's why they play the game. So if these areas of concern can be addressed and maybe a couple, 2, 3 of them can be flipped upside down to correct, from wrong to correct, gives us a better shot, better chance. So the defense, the offense, special teams a little shaky. But for the most part, this was a complete game for our Green Bay Packers. Again, a lot of that resides on the fact that the Vikings had one of their worst games. So I'm not going to get too excited here. I'm not going to start anointing us Super Bowl champions. But when you see Love, and I'll give you his line if I can pull it up. Jordan Love had a 125 passer rating. Once again, over 100 in the passer rating. 470 total yards for our offense. Almost 5 complete football fields. 28 first downs. 28. There's games where you feel like you're struggling to get 3 first downs in the entire game. 9 of 14 on third downs. 9 of 14. And you ready for this? In time of possession, the Green Bay Packers had a 15-minute advantage. So do the math. That's a whole quarter that we held the football longer than Minnesota. When you hold the football a full quarter more, and you're just a field goal ahead, you're most likely going to win that game. Thankfully, we were more than a field goal ahead. And again, that's the offense. And you had people like Bo Melton catching touchdown passes. I'm still trying to figure out what a Bo Melton is, but I'm down for that kid. Let's rock out a Bo Melton. That's how hurting we are when Watson's on the sideline most of the season. They think he's going to play next week. Yeah, don't hold your breath on that. You have a better shot at winning the lottery at this point. Watson's on the sideline. Jaden Reed, who had 2 touchdowns last night. Another big game by Jaden Reed. He didn't even complete it. He went out with another injury. Coach LaFleur is hopeful that he's going to play next week against the Bears, but he went out. He didn't even do a complete game. Already had 2 touchdowns. But you got Jaden Reed on the sideline. You got Watson on the sideline. Wicks is questionable every other week. Wicks is out there, sideline. And others, you have to put in a Bo Melton. But he scored that touchdown, man. There was some big drops, too, that could have swifted the momentum. There was one big drop. Was that Bo Melton, actually? I don't want to place that on him. I don't have the exact name, but there was a drop in that first quarter. Wow. That would have put us up 14 points, I want to say, bare minimum. I think it was already 10-3. Maybe 10-0. I don't know. But we were in that red zone. Love drops back tosses that thing up, beautifully thrown ball. It was just about 7 feet to the west. That's what I mean. When Love misses, he misses, and it's not good. So, I mean, this dude had to just dive for this when he was wide open. And he got there. He just dropped it, just went through his butterfingers, man. And then those are the type of plays that could have switched up momentum. But later in the game, there was a big strip sack. So I forgot. They've had 5 quarterbacks. I don't even know which quarterback this was, but we're going for that sack. He's about to get dropped like a stack of bricks, but we got the ball instead. That was a massive turnover. Really big. And there was an interception, too. It was a beautiful tip interception. Just 2 inches overthrown by Minnesota's QB, tipped up in the air by their receiver, and luckily our defensive back came up with it. So when you get the turnover ratio in your favor, that's another area where you're probably going to win the games. These turnovers, those are the clutch moments in the game. Offenses are going to go to battle. Defenses will go to war. And when it's all said and done, it's going to be those little things that aren't so little. Things like turnovers, penalties, extra points. These will be the deciding factors. Carlson, for instance, missed another field goal last night. Not field goal, extra point field goal. That's right, just the extra point. That is his 5th missed extra point. He leads the league in missed extra points. That's obviously not a statistic you want to lead the league in. But our field goal kicker, Carlson, I mean, at that point, you might as well have kept Mason Crosby. Right? The reason we got rid of Mason Crosby, who has been with the Packers, which seems like forever, but it's because he's been missing too many clutch field goals. He hits a lot, but he's started to miss a lot. A few years ago, you guys remember, he missed... Wow, one clutch field goal after the other, but there was one game where he missed like 4 or 5 in a game, and he's done that several times in his career. So when you can do that and get in that downward spiral in your dome piece, that's not good because we need you in the game. If you miss one, we need to know that you can come right back, bounce right back, and come up big for us. He just missed a big field goal for the New York Football Giants. And that was a big game. That was the Giants versus the Saints. We needed the Saints to lose that. And Mason Crosby lost it. He probably knew the Packers needed that. I'm kidding. Jokes. But he did miss it, and the Saints beat the Giants. That made it harder for us. The Rams ended up winning. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, did the Rams beat the Buccaneers? Maybe the Bucks. No, I think the Bucks won too. I don't know. Every team that we needed to lose won, except for one, and it was the main one, the Seattle Seahawks. They lost yesterday. And that was I've been saying this for weeks. I call them the pesky Seahawks because they've had this resurgence and they just don't lose. The problem with that is we need them desperately to lose. It's the only way the Packers were going to get to the playoffs. Even if we win last night and next week, if the Seahawks don't lose, they're in, and they just haven't been losing. When they lost yesterday, I was like that. You remember the Home Alone when the hotel guy finds out that Kevin McAllister is using a stolen credit card, and it comes up stolen, and the guy just has this big shit-eating grin. I mean, that was me when I saw the Seattle Seahawks lose that game. And then word came down about 10 minutes later that because of that, the Packers just have to win out. I didn't know it was going to be that easy after the Seahawks. Not that that's easy, trust me. Packers winning consecutive games is not easy this year. But I didn't think that if the Seahawks just lost, we would just have to win 2 straight. I thought that we'd have to still go through some hoops. Again, the Buccaneers, the Saints, the Rams, all these teams ahead of us in that bubble. It was a cluster F. It really was. It was a mess. But because the Seahawks lost, man, we got the destiny in our own hands, and we just have to win out. Yesterday was that big. Offensively, we showed up and showed out. Jordan Love showed you just a little bit of what he's capable of. He has to pull in those balls. They're grossly overthrown and underthrown. East, west, north, south by a whole football field, it seems. That has to be tightened up. If he can tighten up his game, you're going to see a decent to good Jordan Love this year become great. I'm serious. He's got that talent. He's got to tighten it up. And as far as Joe Barry's defense, nobody knows what to think this morning. Nobody. I've been gauging many Green Bay Packer and NFL insiders. I've had conversation with top insiders. We don't know what to think of Barry's defense. And that's, again, because Vikings played so poorly. But to their credit, they played a tight, solid game. So you got to give them the credit that they did earn yesterday, I should say. And it bought Joe Barry the final game of the regular season for sure. I mean, that's mostly when you win a game 33-10 and the only touchdown was really off of special teams and you pinned your defense with them just getting 10 yards to a touchdown. You can't blame that on the defense, obviously. So when you do that 33-10, you're going to shut a lot of people up, right? But it's not going to take away from the facts that Joe Barry's defense this year has been unacceptable. That's the word I'm going to use, unacceptable. And that defense that we've been seeing the last 2 months, that can't show up to the play. That defense could not show up to Minnesota. We would have never even been in this game last night, if Joe Barry's defense that has been playing this year showed up last night. This was a different defense. This is like one of those, what was the movie, Major League? When, actually, it's funny I say that too. I mentioned the Home Alone movie. Well, the guy who plays Marv, right? He's like the pitching coach or something, and he gets locked in the cage in the clubhouse. So they're playing, it's the Cubs. They're playing the game, and this coach, played by Marv, Daniel Stern, I think his name is, and that's the actor, Daniel Stern. And he's locked himself in the clubhouse. Meanwhile, everybody else is out on the field playing the games. Forgot what movie it is. I believe that could be Rookie of the Year, but I think it's not Major League. Maybe it is Rookie of the Year. Man, it's one of those baseball movies. Anyway, point is, it was one of those moments where you thought, is the defense like locked in the locker room somewhere? And this is like, who is this defense? This ain't Joe Barry's defense. Or did Joe Barry just need his ass to the fire to step up? Maybe the focus wasn't there, and this was the week where Joe Barry said, all right, enough. I've heard what you guys are. We've been horrendous. I should not be in this position. So I'm going to get better. I'm going to be better this week. I'm going to show you. I'm going to start to prove it. Maybe. All right. Then everything we've been saying then, guess what? It was justified, and it was good that we did say it, because you got the defense we saw last night. Again, you're not gonna get that type of Minnesota offense. You're not going to get that too much going forward. Not even from the Bears, as poorly as they've been playing. You're not going to get that every week, especially as we get into the playoffs. Should we be able to get there? If you think that you're going to get an offense like that, no. The defense still has to step up massively. Can Joe Barry's defense do that? I truly believe they have the talent and skill to do it. Did Joe Barry, was he able to reel in his own team again? Time will tell. Unfortunately, time's running out in the season. We have to win next week. That was a lot of information. That was a lot of discussion. I know I was a little over the place, guys. I didn't have a lot of time. It is New Year's. I wanted to keep this within 15 to 20 minutes. We've already gone over that clearly. But I want to wish you guys, every single one of you guys, all my subscribers out there, whether you come for the Green Bay Packer content or NFL or my professional wrestling content, to all my subscribers that took a moment to subscribe, to smash those ups on all these uploads throughout 2023. I appreciate you. I thank you. And I hope you guys have an awesome new year and kick ass in 2024. And throughout the way, I'll be right here on the channel giving you all the football or Green Bay Packers more specifically, and all the wrestling topics, headlines, reviews. Yeah, let's have a power year. Until next time, and there will be that next time, the Packers 33-10 over the Vikings. And we are now going to, and by the way, 8-8 record. We evened it up. We 500-ed it. 500-ed it. There you go. And now we're going over to face the Bears. If we win that, we're in the playoffs. This is going to be a big week. Next week, all the chips are on the table. The stakes could not be any more higher. But then again, that's how it was last night. We came through. Can we do it one more time? Regroup. And then we're talking playoffs. For now, top guys, we are out. BC saying check you. Peace.